when most people think of KMET, they think of the heyday of Sam Bellamy as the program director and Jeff Gonzer and Jim Ladd and Mary Turner and so forth. Mm-hmm. But Shadoe had preceded them there as PD, really got them up in the ratings, and he was responsible for that upside-down billboard campaign.
Welcome once again to the Talking Archive. I'm Josh Jacobs. Follow us on Instagram at JoshDJ57. And if you haven't done so already, subscribe to our YouTube channel. And our conversation continues now with radio personality and voiceover talent Bill Wright. Now, after KYMS, you went to KBIG, then called Big Mix 104, and eventually KBIG 104.
Yeah.
How did you hire? Tell us about how you got to KBIG.
Okay, well, this, I think, is one of those great miracles because, having spent most of my career in Orange County at that time, and notwithstanding my time at KPFK, which was non-com, so sort of didn't count in the grand scheme of things to the people that, had to perform in the ratings books, I, by all rights, shouldn't have been considered for it, but I had met someone in the changeover at Quiz. They brought over a gal that had worked at KOCM, K-Ocean later,
yeah.
And her name was Carolyn Clark, is the name she went by, and she came over and was working as our night personality, and I was production manager. And she was working the Orange County Fair. We had a booth down there, and one of the promotions people at KBIG came up and said, they're looking to get a gal on the air in the evening, and you ought to send a tape. So she did, and she got hired at KBIG. And a little while later, I'm at KYMS, and I got a call, and she said, we've got this morning show up here. It's called Bill and Sylvia in the morning, and it was Bill Meyer and Sylvia Aimerito. Mm-hmm. Sylvia, famous for her time really at KNAC, is where she got started. And they had this 5-year running morning show, and Bill wanted to go on and get a PhD in psychology, of all things, so he was going to leave, and they were looking to replace him, and they kind of hoped to keep, the Bill and Sylvia identity, which they had invested in on coffee mugs and whatnot, to continue the thing. And I'm thinking, well, anyone can call themselves Bill. I mean, how many people go by their real name
That's
anyway?
True.
My name just happened to be. It really is Bill. So I said, well, if you'll put in a good word for me, I'll go ahead and I'll send a tape, whatever. So I send this tape up, and I'm sure it won't get the time of day, but wow, I got a call saying, hi, I'd like you to come up and let's talk. So I came up, and they said, so here's the deal. We want every applicant to sit in on the morning show, see what it's like, and then you'll do an audition with Sylvia, and then we'll see. So I sat there, and I came up, and it was great to sit in on a major market radio station. And I should say KBIG signal was always the best one, the best FM signal in L.A. Mm-hmm. Right in the center of the dial, about 104, 104.3, 100,000 watts, Mount Wilson, the whole deal. Good signal. So I'm thinking, yeah, this is great, but, they're never going to hire me. So we get to the audition, and I'm thinking, I'm just going to have fun. I'm just going to learn a little bit about the audition process. It's good for the voiceover career and stuff. And I was just as relaxed as can be. And it just turns out that Sylvia and I had this great chemistry. Mm. And so, about 10 days later, I'm paying no attention to this. And I got a call from Rob Edwards, the program director at the time. He goes, congratulations, you got the job. Well, after I picked myself up off the ground, I said, wow, I mean, why? And he said, well, there were 200 applicants, and your chemistry, you were the best one there.
Wow.
So I guess it's just because I was terribly relaxed. So I got started right after New Year's Day in 1992, and did 5 years up there. There were some growing pains, I have to say. Again, I think I grew a great deal as a professional broadcaster at that time. The format was AC. We were, always perpetually sort of in the shadow of Coast. Mm-hmm. We were, we used to say we were the Avis to their Hertz. But it was okay because the audience, there was so much available in the LA Metro that even at number 2 of the AC stations, we still had really high average quarter hours and good cumes. My goodness. And so it was a good time, and I think we managed to do some pretty good radio eventually. Yeah, it was a lot of fun, and you're doing mornings in LA. You have the world is your oyster. Mm-hmm. We got to talk to some of the great music artists at the time, people in TV, music, did a lot of appearances, and it was just even some TV. It was really cool. Really a neat thing, and then kind of, I think, it was living the dream for sure for any of us that, again, with the alien DNA that hope to get into radio.
Now, how many songs, because it was called Big Mix 104, how many songs were the playlist? I mean, obviously the top 40 songs are going to rotate a lot more, but total. It was
pretty similar to what you had in LA at the time. 200 to 300 songs, some in higher rotation than others. Mm-hmm. I will tell you that there are songs that I have to play both at Quiz and at KBIG that are still a big part of, say, KRF 101's playlist now. If I never hear them again, it'll be too soon. I mean, some of these songs, you have to play, you played them 10,000 times, and, I just thought there's so much more music out there than these few songs that get played over and over and over again. Yeah. But, they would focus group everything, and they'd test every song, and if the song tested well, it was in rotation. And I used to go round and round with the music director saying, how about resting some of these songs for like 6 months, then bring it back? But they didn't listen to me.
Well, it's kind of funny you mention that because I'm thinking to myself, The Police, I like The Police. However, I think I Can't Stand Losing is a much better song than Roxanne. So that's just an example for me.
Well, yeah, we all had our favorites. The one that killed me, and I'm a big Elton John fan. I loved his earlier stuff, but when The Circle of Life came out, we played that over and over and over again. Did not like it anymore.
Yeah. or Stevie Wonder, I Just Called to Say I Love You. It's like, dude, there are so many other great songs, including his awesome rendition of the Beatles, We Can Work It Out. That's a great version. Yeah. I'd rather hear that any day than I Just Called to Say I Love You. Cha cha cha. It's like, oh gosh. I mean, the video was even cheesy. He's like on a telephone. It's like, oh, come on, really?
Well, I remember I did actually maybe have a little bit of influence. It's just it was slow. About the time that Joan Osborne came out with What If God Were One of Us, which was playing big on the competitors at the time, the hotter stations like Star 98. And I suggested this is really going to be a good hit. You should play it. And also, I think you could add a little Alanis Morissette. And it's like, thank you. What did the jocks know? And, of course, they waited too long. A couple of months later, they ran, focus group. And, of course, these songs tested really well. And they did get added. And I said, if only they'd listened to me, we could have been on it sooner. But what does a jock know,
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's funny because Joan Osborne's other hit, St. Teresa, sounded like it could have been the B-side to Midnight at the Oasis by Maria Muldaur.
Yeah.
I was like, when I heard that, I was like, wait a minute, this sounds like Maria Muldaur. The funny thing is that Christian rock band DC Talk, their live band, did an album called Zilch, and their album was called Platinum, which didn't sell anywhere near 1 million copies. It didn't even sell 100,000 copies. But it was kind of like, their sound was kind of like power pop of 60s, 70s, 80s influence. They had a song called In the Sky, and they actually kind of answered Joan Osborne's song. They had, I thought about for a while, many questions for the asking. She asked if God was just a slob like us. Well, maybe something there is lacking. And they even answered Dishwalla, well, let me tell you all my thoughts on God, because I just spoke with him this morning. So they actually answered 2 songs in one with that song, but it was only on the Christian charts and never made.
We did play Dishwalla on KBIG. I'm going to give him that much. Great stuff. Collective Soul, a couple other great bands I liked.
Oh, Collective Soul is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Like Shine, and I think they were influenced by Daniel Amos, the old Christian rock band from Orange County.
Yeah.
And then the 77s. Now, I listened to the air check that you sent me of Bill and Sylvia. By the way, I did actually meet Dr. Bill Meyer a couple times when he came up here to the radio station. He was very friendly to me. You got to play Hollywood Squares. How often did you do that during the morning show?
Well, Shadoe Stevens is another great name amongst the immortals in radio. Shadoe, was on KRLA. Mm-hmm. He was one of the early influences at KMET. When most people think of KMET, they think of the heyday of Sam Bellamy as the program director, and Jeff Gonzer and Jim Ladd and Mary Turner and so forth. Mm-hmm. But Shadoe had preceded them there as PD, really got them up in the ratings, and he was responsible for that upside down billboard campaign where KMET was upside down on the billboard.
I remember that.
Which definitely got your attention, didn't it?
Anyway,
and then Shadoe became even better known for his Federated Electronics TV commercials. He was Fred R. rated, and these were tremendous commercials. And so one day we got word that Shadoe was participating in a charitable event that he wanted to promote. Would we give him some time on our show? And I said, are you kidding? Absolutely. So at that time, one of the things Shadoe was doing was announcing for the Hollywood Squares, and I think he even occupied squares from time to time. So we got the idea, let's do something fun before we get into the promotional part of it. And so we came up with, a Hollywood Squares game based on kind of pop culture stuff going on at the time. And so, we were just basically picking him because he was the only one getting picked, with all the little sound effects and the audience applause and all that sort of stuff. And so we played the Hollywood Squares with Shadoe. And, we roughed out kind of a script, but he was so great. He just ran with it in his inimitable way, and we just had a grand time with him. And, again, I almost got down on the floor and did I Am Not Worthy because, that's Shadoe Stevens. He was on Dave's World at the time as well as an actor, and just did so much for our business. And what a voice he had.
Oh, yeah.
Great voice.
Sometimes his brother, Richard Stevens, who sounded just like him, announced the Hollywood Squares in his place if Shadoe wasn't able to be there.
Yeah.
In fact, he was on KRLA back in the early 70s.
Right. And I said had. Shadoe's still with us. He's not gone.
No. And he was, in fact, he switched KRLA from Top 40 to Freeform FM on AM format. Mm-hmm. And then he said that the management wanted to fail. They thought, this Freeform on FM, AM is going to fail, and it ended up bringing the ratings up even more, so they let him go and decided to come up with something called Future Rock. He says nobody knew what it was, but it was terrible. So then he went to K-Rock, and there's a cool picture of him, China Smith, and Sam Riddle together on the beach for the K-Rock jock lineup. And I thought it was pretty interesting, these young guys with Sam Riddle, of all people, because Sam Riddle was, first KFWB, then KRLA, KFWB, and KHJ.
One of the boss jocks.
Yep. And he's on K-Rock, carried over from the Top 40 format that was short-lived for K-Rock into the free form. And then, of course, he later created Star Search. And then Shadoe did his own American Top 40 countdown as well.
Yeah, poor Shadoe. He got mixed up with the owners of K-Rock at the time, and he put K-Rock on the map before Rick Carroll even, and they went dark for a while because they ran out of money, and I think that's when he went to KMET. But Shadoe was everywhere. He got K-Rock started, got KMET up in the ratings, just did a little bit of everything.
Yeah, and another guest you had on was another KRLA alum from earlier on, Casey Kasem, when KRLA became the #1 top 40 station, taking away KFWB's crown. He was part of the 1110 men when it was the station of the Beatles. They went full on the Beatles. I mean, from the Hollywood Bowl, where Bob Eubanks mortgaged both his house and both his cars and his Cinnamon Cinder clubs to bring the Fab Four to the Bowl, which nobody ever brought a rock and roll band to the Bowl. Usually the rock and roll bands would be either a Civic Auditorium or a Legion Hall, and that was the biggest they'd get. And the gamble paid off. So how often did you have Casey on your show?
Well, Casey, we were fortunate enough. American Top 40 was his flagship syndicated program, but he branched out into an AC version of it. I think it was called Casey's Top 20 or Hot 20, something like that. And KBIG was the station that they chose to be the LA outlet. And so Casey was nothing if not a great promoter and was willing to do pretty much anything that we needed him to do. So, of course, we had him on at least 2 or 3 times on our show. And then he went out and did some promotional appearances with us. And I remember one of those was the LA County Fair in Pomona. And we are sitting there on a dais. It was Sylvia, myself, and Casey signing autographs. Mm-hmm. And I'm sitting up there, and Casey was surely one of my great idols. And I'm sitting there going, what the heck am I doing up here with Casey Kasem sitting over to my right? But he couldn't have been more nice and more gracious, treated us exactly as peers, not as peons, and was just so lovely. In fact, he even said, I'm going to be hosting a segment of KCET's local fundraising next week. Why don't you come over, answer phones, and we'll give you a little plug for your morning show? We said, great, and that's what happened. So we were over there at KCET doing that. He was so very nice. For those that don't know, not only was Casey just a giant in radio, but he was also king voiceover-wise. He was the voice of Shaggy on Scooby-Doo, among other characters. And he was the voice of NBC for a number of years, where he did all their promos and trailers and things like that.
That's right.
And he did a fabulous job of it.
He was also the voice of Robin on the superheroes cartoon of Batman and Robin fame.
Yep.
And I remember meeting him back in 1996. At the time, I had a mop-top hairstyle and an Abe Lincoln beard, no mustache, and I was wearing a dark purple T-shirt. And the first thing he said to me is like, "Hi, Casey, good to meet you. Are you an actor?" "Well, I've done a little. You should try out for the role of Shaggy in the new Scooby-Doo movie they're making." And I'll never forget that. I got to meet and work with his daughter, Carrie, for about 6 months. She was the host of a show that a dentist was putting on, and so she was the moderator of the show, and she was great to work with. So she's been successful. So is his son, Mike.
Yeah, well, it's in the blood, right?
Oh, yeah. This is the Talking Archive. I'm Josh Jacobs. We're talking with radio personality and voiceover talent Bill Wright, remembering his time at KBIG 104 back in the 1990s. And next time, he'll share some more wonderful stories about some guests that he had as part of the Bill and Sylvia team on KBIG.